The executive order is called the National Defense Resources Preparedness Order. It was issued on March 16th. Paul Joseph Watson and Alex Jones have covered it, especially on the show yesterday, but there's more to it. We posted a story on this on Natural News last night. It's gone very viral, 10,000 shares on that just this morning. But some people were asking, well, wait a minute, the federal government hasn't seized all the farms and all the food and all the fertilizers. No, they have seized control. They have asserted authority and control over all of these resources. The actual physical seizure will come at a later date, but this executive order does assert control. And I want to explain how that works by parsing the language of this executive order so that everybody understands it. If you look at section 201 under part 2, priorities and allocations, this word allocations is crucial to understand because it says that this order is designed to, quote, allocate materials, services, and facilities as deemed necessary or appropriate to promote the national defense. And that could mean anything. But if you look at the word allocation, how do you allocate something if you don't have it? So in order for the government to allocate something, it must first confiscate it, John. And that brings me to my first slide right here. Allocation is confiscation. Can you see that? For those of you watching on prisonplanet.tv, allocation is confiscation. So wherever in this order that you read the word allocation, you must first assume confiscation takes place, and then once the government has those resources, food, tractors, livestock, energy, water, labor, metals, you name it, then they reallocate it based on their priorities, and we'll talk about their priorities as we continue this, John.
Well, that's an important point you're making, very important, Mike, as you're saying. How are you going to allocate something unless it's already under your control? Which essentially means you own it because you can do whatever you want with it. So this idea, you know, they like to use this word allocation. It sort of gives you the sense of, oh, we know what we're doing and we're planning and we're putting some over here and putting some over there, all in the best interest, of course, of you, the people. That's all we have in mind, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a centrally planned economy. I mean, that's what it comes down to. It is really a communist-style takeover of all private property across America. And when they get into food, specifically in this executive order, they named food, farms, fertilizer, livestock, tractors, all of this food production equipment. And then in another section, they define what is a food resource. And here it is, quote, right from the whitehouse.gov document. Food resources means all commodities and products or complements to such commodities or products that are capable of being ingested by either human beings or animals. That's
Hold on, Mike. Hold that thought. We got to go to a break here. This is John Rappaport sitting in for Alex Jones. John Rappaport back sitting in for Alex Jones on the Alex Jones Show. We're rounding the far turn. We're coming into the last half hour plus here with Mike Adams, the health ranger. And Mike, you were talking about being able to understand the language in these executive orders and, you know, pronouncements from the White House and how this is shaping what really is happening in America. So please continue. This is fascinating.
Yeah, we're going through the language and the definitions so that everybody really understands just what a big power grab this is, this executive order that was issued by President Obama just a few days ago. We covered the food resources definition before the break there. There's one more sentence that's important there because in this order it states, and again, this is posted on whitehouse.gov. This isn't some made-up thing. This is right there out in the open. As Alex said, it's hidden in plain view. The words say, quote, food resources also means potable water packaged in commercially marketable containers, all starches, sugars, vegetable and animal or marine fats and oils, seeds, cotton, hemp, and flax fiber. So this...
Wow.
Federal government...
Okay, we lost Mike there for a second. He was about to say the incredible extent here, I think he mentioned even hemp, of control by the government over all of these resources. When they say food, they mean anything that you could possibly ingest or could be considered a food or supports food industry. Allocation becomes absolute control. And that's what's happening here. We're going to try to bring Mike back, but we're going to continue in the meantime. Oh, Mike, you back?
Yeah, I'm back. It's a little glitchy
Good.
today. Continuing with energy, this executive order also claims total control over all forms of energy in the country, including solid fuels, petroleum, gas, coal, solar, and wind. So everybody out there who has a solar system, you think you own it. No, you don't. The federal government owns it. Obama just seized control or asserted control over your solar system, meaning the federal government could come take it at any time if they deem it's necessary for any kind of a national emergency or national defense. And again, that could be from anything. It could be something they make up. They could post something on a message board somewhere and say a terrorist has threatened to, for example, blow up a train station. They could use that as the trigger to say, let's confiscate all power. There goes your solar system. It's not an exaggeration.
You know, yeah, Alex and Paul Watson pointed out a very good distinction, too, in this latest executive order of Obama's, which is there's no difference really between war, emergency, and peacetime. That this, allocation, this control, the seizing of everything could take place in either case. We don't have to be at war. It doesn't really matter. It's, as you say, it could be an incident provoked by the powers that be. It could be, a whim. It could be anything. It's just like Obama saying, well, I'm not going to kill anybody, but I have a right to order anybody who's an American citizen be killed. But of course, I wouldn't do it. And then you say, well, why did you pass the law in the first place? Well, we had to or something. It's the law. Once it's an order or it's the law, there are people that are going to stand up and salute this, and that's the important thing.
Let's get to stockpiling. Here's another slide. Stockpiling. When the government's stockpiling, that's good. When people are stockpiling, that's bad. So there's another selective system of logic for stockpiling. And in this executive order, it says specifically, Section 202A, it says that the Secretary of Defense oversees the military use of civil transportation stockpiles managed by the Department of Defense and directly related activities. And then it goes in to talk about materials acquired under this executive order if in the judgment of the Secretary of Defense, isn't that the man who just said the UN runs our nation, as the National Defense Stockpile Manager. So do you understand this? The resources across the country are being grabbed and then controlled by a man who says Congress is essentially null and void and the UN makes the decisions for us. So how does that serve America's interests? You tell me.
Panetta recently, of course, said that there was no way that war was going to be declared aggressively by the United States without UN approval, which raised about 20 eyebrows in Washington and millions of eyebrows around the country. Absolutely incredible. And also here, what we're talking about is suggesting at this time, at this crucial time, during a presidential campaign, during an economic deep recession, that we're going to call this wartime, emergency time, control time from above. We're coming down to another break here. This is John Rappaport with Mike Adams, who has a lot more for us on the language of the Obama resolutions and pronouncements. Sitting in here for Alex Jones today on The Alex Jones Show. We'll be right back.
Do you understand how dark it is? How far down the line we are? How late it is?
Mike Adams, the Health Ranger. And Mike, continue to explore the language that's hidden in these Obama declarations about natural resources.
Sure. Well, one of the most often used strategies of tyrants is to pass laws and regulations that are sufficiently vague to allow them to interpret it in any way they want down the road, and then they can claim, well, that's the law. Just like Hitler said, well, that's the law. We're gonna kill all these Jewish prisoners, and we're gonna invade these countries, and that's the law. Well, as Alex often mentions, just because it's the law doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it just. It doesn't make it moral or ethical. So we have all these violations of law going on, and they're all being, quote, made official by words on a piece of paper that really don't mean anything. And one of the key concepts in this executive order is this one: the continuity of government but never the continuity of liberty. Now think about this. If you look at the language of this act, this order, everything about it, and most of what the federal government talks about today is protecting the continuity of government, protecting government with stockpiles of weapons, ammo, communications, food, water, medical gear in caves, all across the country, well, at least in certain strategic areas, I should say. But there's never talk about the continuity of liberty. There's never talk about how do we protect the people. There's never talk about maybe the people should stockpile something. In fact, it's the opposite, John. They say that when people stockpile supplies, they might be terrorists. So wait a minute.
This is fantastic, Mike, that you brought this up. This distinction between different views of stockpile. Because I'm a reporter, I can suddenly whisk back through hundreds of stories that I've read in my life. So-and-so was arrested and accused of stockpiling, right? Right. Stockpiling this or that. Oh, we got to watch out for this guy. He's stockpiling food. Can you believe it? In his cellar, he's got like 6 months worth of food. Oh my God. But on the other hand, the government is stockpiling weapons, is stockpiling reserves of oil, whatever the government stockpiles, we automatically salute it.
Right, and remember the alerts issued by the FBI a couple of weeks ago, which was covered on InfoWars quite extensively, that they said anybody who goes to a military surplus store and buys MREs, and then stockpiles that food, might be a terrorist. It's almost like a Jeff Foxworthy joke. If you do this, you might be a redneck. It's like, if you have a tattoo, you might be a terrorist. If you buy food, you might be a terrorist. In other words, if you do what the government does, you might be a terrorist, but they're not. So, think about the government. They're stockpiling weapons, ammo, communications gear, medical supplies, resources, all kinds of things. Underground bunkers, underground cities, in fact. But if you have more than 3 days worth of food in your pantry, you're suspect? Give me a break.
This is part of the same crackdown, I believe, that happened to James Stewart and Rossum. They look around and they're looking, really, if you boil it down, for independence. You can call it whatever you want to. This guy's thinking for himself. He's got, 3 weeks worth of food in his house. Uh-oh. Right. This guy's selling raw milk. He's out of control. He's out of our control. Uh-oh. He's thinking for himself. We got to stomp on this guy's head. This is almost like saying to me, the free market is a joke. That's what they're saying. It's a complete joke. We're not going to stand for the free market. This guy has a club in L.A., and he's got people that are willing to pick up milk from a farm, and they're part of the club. We're not going to allow that to happen. This is too free market. We want top-down control. Every bottle of milk has to be pasteurized.
That's true. The government wants to create victimization. They want people to be helpless and dependent because that gives government the justification for existence. And I've got one more paragraph to mention from this executive order, but I want to also say, John, I hope you and I can get into some positive solutions. We always talk about the problems, and I know we've also got great ideas on solutions. So let's think about what we can give listeners today on how they can stand up against this and take back their freedom and take back their liberty and take back their sovereignty as individual citizens of this great nation. But here's the section I want to read. And also, this is section 804C. This is the last paragraph of the executive order right before Obama's name signing the order. It says, listen to this, this order is not intended to and does not create any right or benefit enforceable at law, blah, 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 to agents or employees or any other person. In other words, it's saying that even though we, the government, are confiscating everything across the country, it does not give you, the people, any right or any benefit to any of those resources that have been confiscated. So it's, once again, very clever lawyer language, sufficiently vague, but if you read between the lines, what it really means is we, the government, can come take from you your food, your seeds, your solar panels, your cattle, your tractors, and you don't have any right or any control over any of it. That's exactly what this executive order states, and it can be initiated or triggered by any statement. It could be a press conference at the White House. We're now in a state of emergency, and we can't tell you why because that's a national security secret, but we are. Trust us, we're the government. You see how that works, John?